For so many of us, the dream of flying a plane ourselves feels like it's just out of reach. But what if there was a key to unlock the skies? Something designed from the ground up to be more accessible, more affordable than ever before. Well, today we're looking at that key, the light sport airplane. For most of aviation history, that question really did feel like pure fantasy. The dream of getting your own wings was so often grounded by some very real and, let's be honest, very expensive obstacles. The barriers to entry were just sky high. Getting a pilot's license took a huge amount of time and an even bigger pile of cash. And the planes themselves? Expensive to buy, expensive to run, and expensive to maintain. It kept a lot of would-be pilots stuck on the ground, just looking up. But then, in the 90s, things started to shift. The industry was really pushing for a change. And in 2004, the FAA made a huge move, a landmark decision, really. They introduced a brand new rule that created the light sport aircraft, or LSA category. This was a deliberate plan to finally open up the world of aviation to more people.
So, what exactly is a light sport airplane? It's not just any small plane you see at the airport. It's a very specific classification with a very clear purpose. At its heart, the idea was to create planes that are, by their very definition, simple to operate and easy to fly. But, and this is a big but we're about to get into, simple does not mean you can just skip your homework. These aircraft demand some serious respect and, of course, proper training.
For an airplane to be called an LSA, it has to fit inside a pretty strict box. Its maximum takeoff weight is only 1,320 pounds. To put that in perspective, that is literally lighter than most small cars. It can only have 2 seats, a single engine, and fixed landing gear. These rules are what keep the aircraft simple, predictable, and in this specific category. Okay, but those limits on size and speed, that was really only one part of the story. The real revolution, the thing that changed everything, was in how these airplanes are actually designed and approved. It was a change that unleashed this massive wave of innovation. And this right here, this is the absolute game changer. See, traditional airplanes have to go through this super long, incredibly expensive, and rigid FAA certification process. LSAs, on the other hand, are built to a different standard, a flexible, industry consensus standard managed by a group called ASTM. This approach is way less costly, and it gives manufacturers so much more freedom to innovate and try new things.
And you can totally see that freedom in the designs. We see LSAs made from all kinds of materials. Some of them look like classic vintage planes, with steel tubes and fabric skin. But many others are built from these sleek, modern composites that allow for some incredible aerodynamic shapes.
It's not just the materials either. The engines, they're a whole different world. Pilots who are used to traditional, big, air-cooled engines are in for a surprise. A lot of LSAs use modern, lightweight, water-cooled engines, and they often have a gear reduction drive, which completely changes how they sound and operate. Okay, take a look at this number, 4,800. Now, if you're a pilot in a traditional plane, seeing 4,800 RPM on your tachometer in cruise would be a serious, uh-oh moment. But in many LSAs, it's totally normal. And the reason is that gearbox. It lets the small engine rev high in its happy place, while the gearbox slows the propeller down to a more efficient speed. And then you step inside the cockpit, and yeah, things look pretty different in there, too. Instead of a dashboard packed with all those round analog steam gauges, a lot of LSAs have glass cockpits with electronic flight displays. These screens bring everything together, your attitude, altitude, speed, engine data, navigation, all onto 1 or 2 super clear displays. And then there's this, which is maybe the most significant innovation of them all. You can get these planes with a ballistic recovery parachute. So in a true worst-case scenario, the pilot can pull a handle and a massive parachute deploys that lowers the entire airplane safely down to the ground. It's an unbelievable game changer for safety. So, what we have here are these incredibly innovative, high-tech, simple-to-operate airplanes. But that brings up the most important question of all. What does it take to actually fly one? Because at the end of the day, the pilot is and always will be the most important part of the entire system. The FAA couldn't be more clear about this in its own handbook. Just because the plane is simple to operate, that is not a substitute for skill, for knowledge, and for good judgment. Proper, methodical training is absolutely 100% essential.
Now, to really complete that whole picture of accessibility, the FAA also created a new pilot certificate to go right along with this new aircraft category. It's called the Sport Pilot Certificate, and it has lower minimum training time requirements, which makes it a faster and more affordable way into the cockpit if you only want to fly LSAs.
For a pilot who's already licensed and is just transitioning from a heavier aircraft, the training is still really comprehensive. You're going to cover everything from a deep dive into the plane's operating handbook to takeoffs and landings in all kinds of conditions, and of course, a thorough review of emergency procedures. It's a very methodical process, and it's designed to build respect for just how differently these aircraft can handle. All right, so let's get in the cockpit. What does it actually feel like to fly one of these airplanes? Because believe me, the experience can be quite a bit different from flying a heavier, standard category plane. The biggest difference a pilot feels right away is in the controls. They're incredibly light and responsive. But that lightness is kind of a double-edged sword. It means the plane is also much more susceptible to wind and turbulence. It also tends to have a steeper glide when the engine is off, which means it loses altitude faster, and that's something a pilot always has to be ready for.
And all of that comes to a head in what many pilots will tell you is the single biggest challenge: landing in a crosswind. You've got this combination of a lightweight airframe, slow landing speeds, and those light controls, and it just demands incredible precision. Until you're really experienced, respecting the plane's limits in windy conditions is absolutely critical.
So, there's no question that light sport airplanes have opened up the skies. They represent this brilliant fusion of smart design and modern technology. But they also serve as this powerful reminder of a fundamental truth in aviation. As the machines we fly get simpler and smarter, the pilot's most important skills, judgment, discipline, and a deep respect for the elements, well, they become more critical than ever before.